today. So I've got 3 pages. I have, just wave so we can see you on camera. I have Arab, Pranitha, and Corbin. They're from Indian Hills and Auburn, here in the Auburn-Washburn School District. They're in 6th grade, and we want to welcome you to committee. And we just had our pictures taken with the governor, and we ran up here to get to committee, and I think Senator Arbright, you have guests today.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. From Olpe High School, we have Cale Steffes. Cale's grandfather served in the House several years. Jesse Kuhlman, James Kimberlin, Braden Linneman, and Eli Markowitz from Olpe High School. Welcome.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. This is an absolutely riveting committee. I'm sure you're going to learn a lot. So I'm still missing 2 committee members. Was Marcy in Ag? Mike? Marcy's on her way? Beverly's on her way. I'm missing 3. I forgot. There they are. Yay. Very good. So Senator Gossage and Senator Francisco, we're going to work these 2 bills first and then do a presentation because Eileen will have to leave us. That's all right. So we will start with Senate Bill 21 and Miss Eileen, could you refresh our memory on Senate Bill 21, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just Eileen is fine. Senate Bill 21 is the bill that required third-party administrators maintain separate fiduciary accounts for individual payers and not commingle funds that they hold on behalf of multiple payers. This bill also requires that administrators disclose to the commissioner any bankruptcy petition filed by or on behalf of the administrator pursuant to Chapter 9 and Chapter 11 of the Bankruptcy Code.
Thank you. Committee, do you have any questions of the reviser? Senator Gossage.
No questions of the reviser.
Okay, very good. Do you have questions in general? Do you want to make a motion?
Yes.
I think we may have an amendment.
Okay.
Yes. Whose amendment is it, Eileen? Senator Warren, you have an amendment?
I do, Madam Chair. You were asking for questions of the reviser.
Yes, questions of the reviser. You do not have a question of the reviser, but we do have an amendment. So Senator Gossage, can I go to Senator Warren for that amendment? Thank you. Senator Warren, do you want to, you have the amendment on your desk. Do you want to describe it?
Yes,
Senator
that would
Warren?
be great. Thank you, Madam Chair. So with Senate Bill 21, if you'll remember some of our discussion regarding the last section there of Section 2, an administrator shall immediately disclose to the commissioner any bankruptcy petition filed. I think through committee discussion, and to me it seemed that immediately was vague, and one of the things we need to do in statute is provide proper notice and in the statutes that we write, and so I felt it would be helpful to define what immediately means, and you'll see the balloon there. It would be defined, rather than immediately, which is struck, it would be defined as at the time such filing is made, so that the administrator would disclose to the commissioner any bankruptcy petition at the time such filing is made.
Thank you, Senator Warren. Are there any questions or comments on that amendment? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the amendment?
I move my amendment.
Do I have a second? Second. Senator Fagg. Is there any discussion on that amendment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, amendment will go on. Is there a motion on the bill, committee? Senator Gossage.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to mention that a third-party administrator that's overseeing the claims as the monies come in for self-funded or level-funded employers, as those funds come in and they pay claims out of that fund, it's very important to keep those separate. So the funds that go to one employer are not intermingled with funds that come from another employer. This just absolutely makes sense. So I move that we pass favorably as amended Senate Bill 21.
Thank you. Is there a second? Senator Arbright. Is there any discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes as. Okay, we'll just set that aside here. All right. Committee, our next bill is Senate Bill 23. Eileen, would you like to describe that for us?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 23 was the bill, as you recall, that would require agents and insurers to respond to inquiries from the Commissioner of Insurance within 14 calendar days. This is also the bill that would authorize insurers that offer a product or service for an extended period of time upon request to the department if they cannot meet the requirements or they don't have the data that meets the requirements that we talked about last time.
Committee, do you have any questions of the reviser? Right, you also have an amendment on your desk for Senate Bill number 23, and that was Senator Francisco. Did you want to describe your amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as the reviser described, that the bill gives insurers or producers an opportunity to request an extension of the 1 year that is granted for a pilot or testing period. This amendment would also then say, upon such a request, the commissioner may grant that extension for of a specified time. And so I think that's clear that the commissioner would have to grant the extension for it to be useful. Oh, yeah, the idea that they would specify a time. So they would be responding and say, this is an additional year, or this is 6 months, or whatever the commissioner feels appropriate.
Committee, do you have any questions regarding the amendment? Would you like to move your amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move my amendment.
Is there a second? Second. Senator Gossage. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the amendment passes. We are back on the bill, Senate Bill 23. Do I have a motion, or what's the will of the committee here? Senator Argabright?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move to approve the Senate Bill 23 with the amendment.
Favorable for passage.
Favorable to passage. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Second, Senator Warren. Are there any questions, discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. That bill will be turned in as amended. Thank you. Good work. And now we are ready for a presentation. Eileen, we will see you later. And it is our pleasure today to have representatives from the Kansas Pharmacists Association. And so I think our first person, have you changed your order? Are you? Well, I would invite you up to the podium, then introduce yourself and welcome to our committee. We're ready to hear what you have to tell us. Of course, I have a trivia question for you. When I was in grade school, the only pharmacy we had in my little town was Rexall Drugstore. Do you remember Rexall drugstores? They've disappeared, but thank you. Thank you. Welcome, Sloan.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. My name is Sloan Freeman. I'm a pharmacist, and I am a proud pharmacist serving the state of Kansas in South Central Kansas. I'm an independent pharmacy owner, and many of the pharmacies that we have are small pharmacies, and we're the only pharmacy in the county. So I'm here today to just give you an overview about what a pharmacist does and some patient information, things that we do for our patients and for our communities. One of our biggest things that we do is we conduct in-depth medication reviews. And so we have patients that bring brown bags to our pharmacy and just dump them out and say, hey, can you please go with us and go over all of these medications? And they don't have to make an appointment or anything. We just pull them into a room and we go over all of them with them. And then we make sure that, you know, they understand what they're taking, what the medication is for, and any side effects that they might have possible. And then we are the first line of communication a lot of times for these patients back to their doctor's office if they have questions or if they just didn't understand what they were told in their doctor's appointments. And so we we do a lot more than just fill the prescription and send it out the door. Anytime that patients have compounds that need to be made, so if they can't swallow the pills, if they have a G-tube, if they have other issues that they need medications compounded because they just don't have the resources or the ability to take some of these medications, we're there to help them so that they get what they need. We also help patients understand their insurance benefits. A lot of times they'll come to us and they'll bring us letters from Medicare or from their insurance and say, can you please explain this to me? What does this mean for me? And so we do a lot of that type of information that we give out to that. We also catch drug interactions before they ever reach the patient. There are many times where physicians, they go to different physicians and different doctors' offices, and they may not have all the complete information of the patient. And so one of the things we do is we have all of that information in our system, and it helps us to be able to make sure that the patient has the right medications, that there's no other medications that interact with each other, so that the patient gets the best possible outcome. We also provide precise dosing calculations. We have kidney function dosing. So if you have a kidney that is not working very well, then a lot of times the providers will ask us, how do we dose this correctly so that they're able to get the medication that they need and not have a toxicity to that. We also do pediatric dosing. We do elderly dosing, antibiotic dosing in hospitals and outside in retail pharmacies. So we do a lot of calculations for that as well. And then we offer expert counseling on over-the-counter services. So if a patient comes in and says, hey, I just have a cold, how do I feel better? Then we go out front and we talk to them about all the different options that they have and recommend what we would do for those type of things. So we have several different aspects of things that we do besides just filling the prescription and sending it out the door. I'd like to kind of hit a few points on some of the patient testimony that I added in there. I have patients that we deliver to daily. We go 10 to 15 miles outside of our pharmacies to make sure that patients have the medications that they need in a timely manner. So without my pharmacy, I would have to travel 60 miles to get drugs that I need daily, and they don't drive. A lot of these people do not drive, and so the elderly people, it's hard for them to get into the cities to get their medications. So having us there is a great resource for them. They can call us and ask any questions. We deliver after hours. We have multiple different avenues to get the patients the medications that they need. Local pharmacies contribute to the local economy, supporting jobs and investing in the community. We're the donors of the 4-H kids and of the schools. We donate bags for popcorn, and we donate. There's communities that get school supplies from our pharmacies. And so we're kind of a huge lifeline of the community, not just for pharmacy services, but just as in general, we support the community as much as we possibly can. Let's see, we have ever-changing needs of elderly grandparents that they can just walk in and they can ask us these questions of, what do I do because I don't understand Medicare, and my mom and dad are on it, and they don't understand it either, and now everybody's getting confused. And so we can sit down with them, and we can talk to them about all the things that they have and that they need to do. So that's just a glimpse of some of the things that we do for pharmacy. And we have the ability to do more for our patients, and we want to do more for our patients. And we're here today to make sure that our voices heard on behalf of our patients. It's really difficult for pharmacists to be here because a pharmacist has to be in the pharmacy for the pharmacy to be open. And so a lot of us chose to close our pharmacy for today because it's that important for our patients to come and advocate for them so that they continue to have medication access in a timely manner and in a safe manner. So thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you so much, Sloan. We'll hear from Tessa, and then we'll have some questions, maybe? Would you be willing to answer some questions?
Certainly, thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Welcome, Tessa.
Thank you. Thank you for your guys' hospitality this morning. I really appreciate you being willing to hear from us. My name is Tessa Schnelly. I am a pharmacist. I am also a public health practitioner. So I did my schooling at the great University of Kansas, and completed it in 2020. I was a pandemic practitioner, right? I walked right straight into the hospital. That is where I work. I work as a health system pharmacist, both for the University of Kansas at Olathe Hospital, and then I actually am a director of pharmacy for a critical access institution just across the border in that other state, Missouri, and I have a 340B pharmacy. So I see both sides, the urban community as well as the rural community and those needs. And as Sloan mentioned, my practice as a pharmacist inpatient is very, very dependent upon my peers out in the outpatient space, meaning if they aren't there and they aren't able to be that safety net for my patients, they're there to see me in the hospital. As you guys all know, hospital care is very, very expensive. We want to limit that, especially for our constituents in Kansas. That does cost our health plan a lot of dollars here locally. So I decided when it was the middle of the pandemic, everybody else was painting with Bob Ross, right? Like they had their hobbies. I had my hobby too. I'm a learner, so I decided to get my master's in public health. And as a portion of that, being at that time, the president-elect for the Kansas Pharmacists Association, I wanted to be able to give back to my profession through my training in public health. So I obtained my public health degree, my master's in public health through George Washington University in DC. I specialize in health policy and community-based intervention. As a portion of my master's completion, I did a study with them on pharmacy deserts locally in rural Kansas. It was focused specifically on that. The reason being is our modern pharmacy era started around 2006. So our business model all changed. We're not going to talk about that, have no fear. However, that tilted everything off into a different space where our business changed overall. And so we noticed around 2018 that we were seeing a lot of closures inside of the pharmacy space. And that raised some flags because pharmacy has been a component in the community, a stable component in the community for hundreds of years at this point. And why are they closing? So we're not going to necessarily touch on all those things. We're going to touch on the symptoms of things that are happening today. So right now in Kansas in the last decade, we have closed 52 pharmacies. That's 52 communities that no longer have a pharmacist available to them. Once again, this is a person that they can come. They don't have to make an appointment to see their pharmacist. They can get that care right there. There currently is not a cost for them to have that face-to-face time with that pharmacist, so if they're not feeling well. Now, on the other piece of this, there are a lot of things unique to Kansas. As you guys know, we have a lot of rural spaces. So when we're comparing with the rest of the country on their closures, we can see that we are maybe at more risk. And you'll see, I'll point out some key statistics from my study that we found. 210 towns technically, so let me rewind back before I go into this. What defines a pharmacy desert? You guys are familiar, you guys are the insurance committee, you know about the term network adequacy, right? So network adequacy being the minimum amount of healthcare we need available to maintain what is the insurance standards for having a sufficient network. The pharmacy desert that term came into play, and it came into play based off of the sociology of the aspects of pharmacy, right? Like, why does McDonald's have a McDonald's on every corner? Because nobody's driving to get their burger to the next county. There's no incentive, right? Where what I have to do to take off to go and get that, by the time I get there, I'm like, that wasn't worth it. Like that, my time was more important to me. So those same principles come into play when we're talking about the availability of a pharmacy and medication access, is if my patient cannot access meds easily, and there's a barrier to that. If that's a county's drive, there's social additional determinants like, do I have transportation? Do I have the ability to even pay for that gasoline to get from one place to the other? And then there's also the availability of, does my pharmacy even have the ability to bring those meds to me? Do they have a delivery service? Not all do. And so if the barrier for me to go get my medications is so high, I may just choose not to. And in that case, my health in my community is going to suffer. And so as I talk in my study, what we were focusing on inside of that was identifying the areas at most risk, and then what would happen if 50 more pharmacies closed? How big of safety net issue would we have? Because of our rural nature, it does create a larger safety net issue inside of Kansas compared to other states. As you guys know, we may have to have one pharmacy in a county. If that one pharmacy closes in that county, now you're talking about driving across one full county, maybe half of your county and half another county to be able to get to a pharmacy. That's a long drive. There are 210 towns in Kansas that meet the criterion for a rural pharmacy desert. That is 10 miles from a pharmacy or more. The furthest distance a town was from their nearest pharmacy was in Mattville, Kansas, which was 25 miles away. So if the next closest closes, it's over 50 miles to their pharmacy. Of the 63, at the time there were 63 governor MUAs, medically underserved areas. Now there's 61 designated this last year. But at the time, 63 of those, 73% contained a pharmacy desert already inside of it. Approximately 58% of the pharmacy deserts in Kansas were within a medically underserved area. And then 83% were in a health provider shortage area. And I bring that up because a lot of times in our smaller rural communities, you guys may be very well aware of this, the providers will go on a rotational basis. They may only see patients Monday, Wednesday, Friday in one community, see them another schedule in another community. That pharmacist is really the only healthcare provider that's left in the community that's potentially available Monday through Friday, maybe also some hours on the weekends to those patients. So they are an essential part of the safety net is the key piece there. At the end of the day, there are many other symptoms that are occurring as a result of pharmacy closures in the rural spaces. One of those being with our collegiate students that are completing their doctorate at the School of Pharmacy. Because of the instabilities and the lack of, what should I say, flourishment of our current establishments, it's made it so that our new graduates are more hesitant to go into those places as they are concerned that there may not be a space for them due to potential closures. Any closures at this point in time will leave holes in the safety net in Kansas. So I really do behoove you. Today we have over 450 pharmacy professionals here that are more than willing to talk to you about your constituents, how this is impacting them and how it would impact them if they close their doors. We are, of course, more than willing to answer your questions, but I would really love for you to entertain them today in your meetings and ask any questions that you have as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. So I do have a question. Sloan, where are your pharmacies? And you may need to turn the microphone on.
I think it's on. Yes, so I own pharmacies throughout the state of Kansas. What? Sorry. I own pharmacies throughout the state of Kansas. We have Anthony, Atwood, Blue Rapids, Caldwell, Clay Center, Conway Springs, Cottonwood Falls, Council Grove, Eureka, Fredonia, Harrington, Hill City, Kiowa, Kinsley, Lyons, Medicine Lodge, Russell, Sabetha, Sterling, St. John, Troy, Valley Falls, Washington, and Yates Center.
You own and manage all of those?
With multiple partners.
Oh, okay, very good.
With multiple partners. I'm just part owner of some of them, of all of them. Yes.
That's a lot. Thank you. Thank you for that. Committee, questions? Yes, Senator Rose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Tessa and Sloan, for being with us today. Good job. What can the Kansas legislature do to make it more profitable for a pharmacy owner to open a pharmacy in rural Kansas?
I'm going to take this hit for the team. Okay, so I think that one right now, without going into full depth, you will hear about a bill that we are bringing. Right now, the biggest issue is, and I will say this as a health system pharmacist running my business, I run over a $55 million business myself. I do not know how my peers are surviving. I do not know how they have made it this far besides giving out their cash coffers and potentially their own money to make their pharmacies run. We are not currently reimbursed at a rate that allows for these pharmacies to currently stay viable. They will be closed. As an effect of that, like I talk a lot about what happens, people are like, well, mail order, right? Like that seems like a really basic response. If you haven't paid attention to what's going on with the U.S. Postal Service, I would really encourage you to look at that, about like the amount of time that it's taking to get things from one place to another with a 1 time a day pickup, and the lack, like it's not a good safety net. And I say this as a story, and I will tell you a very short story. I will be brief. I could be so long. But I had a patient, there was a patient that gets their meds through the mail. They have seizures. So severe seizures, if they don't have their meds, they'll have a seizure. Snowstorm came through. So our safety plan, right, of being like, oh, we get our meds through the mail, does not work because they don't have their meds and they've been delayed 5 days. They know that they're going to have a seizure. So where are they at? They're in my hospital. They're in my hospital because I have the meds and I can treat them. But if their local pharmacy was their pharmacy, that's a drive up to the pharmacy to get the meds, having it on a shelf. And if that was the pharmacy they could use, then that would be a viable opportunity for them to be able to get meds. The other piece to that is anytime you get a cough or a cold over here and you need something to treat yourself, if you don't have a pharmacy, where are you going to get that from? You're going to wait the 7 to 10 days for that to be delivered to you? No. So really, it's about keeping businesses local, our pharmacy business local. And to be honest, this state has so supported the independent pharmacist. I'm speaking on behalf of all of these guys, but like they have really supported the independent pharmacist. We are built on independent pharmacy here, not chains and what have you. We need our legislature to show up for us and meet us halfway to make sure that we can take care of your constituents, our patients, for the future. Fair payment.
Okay, thank you. Let us know what we can do. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Haley, question?
Coincidentally, Madam Chair, that was kind of along the line I was going. I didn't know if I could ask it and be politically correct about bricks and mortar versus direct access, and what, in fact, in terms of filling would have to do, and how a supplement might be had with beyond the actual physical visit, especially for reissuance or for filling a subsequent, what's the word I'm looking for, when you refill for mailing or for even overnighting in some cases. We've had a couple of I'm in Kansas City. We've had a couple of bricks and mortars that are closing in Kansas City, and we are concerned about the patient population, especially the elderly that don't have access. So that was kind of where I was going, is what have you done or what are you doing for mail access? And believe me, I understand, and a few people around here understand, that the mail sometimes is delayed and how crucial it is to get what's being sent there within a timely period, sometimes even 3 days after it's sent. And, certainly if it's a seizure or some other malady, is there a way to overnight, or what is the continuum of care for direct? I mean, the question has kind of been answered already, but there has to be some kind of, middle ground to plug that hole where you have the deserts that exist.
It is possible for mail order pharmacies to overnight things, but they would have to be able to fill the prescription in a timely manner to get it out the door. We're seeing lead times of 10 to 14 days for them. Once you put a prescription in for refill status, it could be 2 weeks before you get it. So that is concerning, of being able to put the refill in, have them process it, and then send it out the door. It is possible, but I don't know how probable that is.
Thank you. I understand. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Next is Senator Argabright. Question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Either one of you, or maybe someone with the chair permission. 2 questions. One is the decrease in the number of students going through. Are you all collectively getting yourself in front of high school students to promote your profession? And my second question is, follow up on Senator Rose. What's your top 2 priorities that we need to be aware of, especially when we have you in the building? I heard reimbursement rates, but what are those things? Thank you, Madam Chair.
So I will speak to your first question.
Would you reintroduce yourself?
Sorry,
for
Tessa
listening
Schnelly, pharmacist, immediate past president of the Kansas Pharmacists Association. To speak to your first question, Senator Albright, we do have, like the school has, this year, the university saw more students enrolled in the first year than what we have seen in previous years. So we do have an increase in enrollment. Part of that has come from individuals like myself going out and doing presentations at local high schools. I know that I do them on both sides of the state line, Missouri and Kansas, to try and bring in additional individuals. We do identify that we have to identify those individuals in middle school and high school to bring them into the profession, and it will be required that it's a local grow, especially in our rural spaces. They have to want to go back to the rural space. I'm from a rural space, I love that, but sometimes our city dwellers are not going to go out to Dodge City, Kansas. That's not their vibe. So we are actively encouraging that. The university does have documentation as far as like presentations and what have you that we can do in the community. So several of our pharmacists across the state do that on the regular basis. And then I'm going to have Sloan speak to our specific points in regards to that. So we are trying to we know that there's a problem. We also know that they're interested in other parts of pharmacy that actually cause brain drain to the Kansas region. And we'll talk a little bit about that in the form of like what we are trained to do versus what we can actually do in the state of Kansas. Some pharmacists get trained here. They realize that they can work at higher levels in other institutions in other states, and so they choose to go more towards the coast as a result. So we're actively advocating in that space as well to make sure we're working at the top of our licenses and maintaining a high-quality workforce inside of Kansas. But I'll let Sloan speak to your points.
Yeah, Sloan, you want to answer that second question?
Sloan Freeman, I'm the current president of Kansas Pharmacists Association. And our two asks are that we level the playing field on the type of reimbursements for pharmacies, and then some transparency in the payments. We're seeing that employer groups are paying one price and pharmacies are likely getting paid a different price. There's some FTC information out there regarding that, and so those are just our two asks. This is just some transparency with the pricing model, and then being able to pay the pharmacies at a leveler playing field, more level playing field.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Albright. We have Senator Fagg, Senator Kluse, and Senator Gossage.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, when you read off all those cities, I smiled because I've got a lot of them in my area. So I want to tell you, each and every one of you, thank you, because as you look at these small communities, you always look and say, okay, we need a post office, we need a bank. Pharmacy is going to be towards top of that list for a little community. So I tell you, thank you for what you're doing. The question I have has to do with pharmacy desert. That's kind of hit me new. When we said 210 cities, I think there's 625, so we're talking 30% of our cities that's in that desert. So my first question is, who set the definition to that, and exactly where are these deserts at? That's me, the most critical. Thank you.
I would be, Tessa Schnelly, pharmacist. I would be more than willing to mail each of your office my study. It's in the process of being published. That's unpublished, that has the list of every single city and the amount that they have to drive from a pharmacy. This was set, it has been set by national organizations. There's been several definitions for what is a pharmacy desert. I will speak specifically to, this is the most common one that they've come up, like part of my study was to make sure like there's different definitions of what you use. And this was the most common one that they're actually using to like layer for the future of investigating this. As we said, we kind of fall into pharmacy deserts naturally. We have a very rural space in western Kansas, as well as, in southeast, northeast. Anything that's not Kansas City, Lawrence, Topeka, Wichita is predominantly rural. So they're looking at how far is too far. So like I said, how far would you drive to get a gallon of gas? It's not the next county. So like my medications are considered essential things. Would I drive 10 miles one day, 20 miles round trip, right, to be able to get my medications? That's how that was decided. Now they've determined it based off of Some things in regards to transportation, like is there public transportation available everywhere? No, there's not, which is why in an urban space, it's a half of a mile because you're gonna have to hoof it, essentially. If I have COPD and I have to hoof it to the pharmacy and back, I may have an exacerbation along the way if I don't have public transportation. I have no way to get anywhere other than by my feet. So in a rural space, they've defined it as 10 rural miles, 2 miles in a suburban area, 1 mile in an urban area, and a half a mile in neighborhoods that are low income or have low vehicle ownership. That's how we're measuring that. That's how we end up at 210, because if you think about even your county or your space that you are representing, like if a pharmacy, it closes in one town, it's by far more than 10 miles to get to the next town over. So by our definition, if we lose more pharmacies, if we were in a dense space, it would just be, I passed it to the pharmacy. We said 2 miles in a suburban area, right? I passed my scripts to the next pharmacy. It wouldn't be nearly as far as for them to be able to get there. In a rural space, it just requires a lot more travel for the patients, many of which are rural spaces are aging, may not be able to make that travel. I will, by all means, Senator Fagg, send that information to your office so that you can see exactly which of your communities are on that list.
Yes, would you mind emailing it to, if it's all right with you, to Jackie, our committee assistant, and then she can share it with all of us. I think we're all interested in that.
Yes, Madam Chair, of course.
Thank you so much. Senator Kluse, question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This might be for Sloan. You talked about, Sloan, you talked about the being independent and rattled off all the different pharmacies that you're co-owner or have a share in. What's the difference there between independent and chain? And I think I know this answer, but I just want to have clarity on that.
So our store model is that we have independent owners in each community. So our pharmacists in charge are the main person that runs the business, and then we are on the bottom side just to help. So that's different than like a larger corporation that has like stock ownership or something along those lines. So we don't have any stock ownership. We're privately held, and we have, I'm just a minority owner, so I don't have a whole lot of ownership. I just help on the bottom side for like support, like bill pay support and things like that, so.
Okay, follow up. And then, could you tell me the suppliers, are the suppliers essentially the same whether you're independent or chain? Or are there different suppliers as far as, the meds? What's that process look like?
Some of the chains have their own warehouse as well, so they can procure medications at a different place than like we can. We have our wholesalers that we get it through, but some of the larger ones have their own wholesaler, their own warehouse.
So there is a distinction then between those suppliers?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just one more follow-up. And then the last would be, we talked a little bit about the online things, call-in. What does that look like? I mean, obviously they would have to have some kind of a doctor approval, and then are those meds safe, or do those meds sometimes come from suppliers that aren't necessarily recognized or approved?
Like online pharmacies, is that what you're speaking to?
Right.
An online pharmacy, I'm not real familiar with those, but they would have to be accredited by a certain organization to be able to be an online pharmacy, and I'm unsure where they get their medications from, honestly. I can look and get back to you on that, but I'm not real sure exactly where they get their medications from.
So, like we deal with other stuff that, maybe an example would be like wine and the licensing on whether or not they can go across state. So does Kansas have, and excuse my ignorance in this, but did it have to be licensed then in Kansas as pharmacists for that type of a thing, or can they be in another state and still be purchased?
Yeah, so Tessa Schnelly, pharmacist. I'll speak to rules and regs. By no means a fully aware of everything, but in the state of Kansas, if they are distributing to our state, they do have to register with our state. And speaking to your question about online pharmacies, obviously, we also deal with legitimate and illegitimate pharmacies. You can have a fake pharmacy and set it up online, as you guys are probably more than well aware of. Our State Board of Pharmacy does monitor that. So if we are having things that are arriving that are counterfeit, I personally have seen counterfeit drugs come to my pharmacy where they're like, what is this? And I'm like, that is not what it is. So that is a problem in general if it's not coming through the FDA approved way. And if you also are familiar with the DSCSA, the Drug Chain Supply Act, that is a federal law that we do take part in of making sure that we've proven certificate of authenticity on our drugs from where we're receiving them from. We also have to get a copy from our wholesaler stating that these drugs are part of that chain to make sure what we're distributing to our patients is in fact authentic and real.
So trusted local.
Independent
Would be a little more peaceful.
pharmacies, yes.
That's what I was thinking.
Awesome.
Senator Gossage.
Thank you so much for being here. And of course, I've been a health insurance agent for 20 years. I support the local pharmacists. But a couple of things that, there's one thing as my profession, there's another thing as a senator representing the state and the taxpayers' dollars. So oftentimes what happens is we look at this desert, and we've also heard of the provider desert, same dental desert. It's just, as you said, the nature of Kansas. We have these rural areas where people don't necessarily want to go and practice. What we've seen is local communities that say, we really want a doctor here. So can we help to pay for their scholarship? Or if we pay this much, will you come and practice here for at least 2 years? Or so we see those kinds of things. And as Senator Fagg said, you know, your grocery store, your bank, but should the taxpayers of Kansas pay so that a pharmacy can stay viable to stay in a particular area? Usually most taxpayers say, that's not my responsibility to keep the grocery store open in this particular town. So they do have to figure out a way that how can we stay viable, how can we stay open? And I understand that that is the challenge. I also have patients and clients who use mail order and some who don't. They also always want to look at network because you can go to one pharmacy and say like, oh, wow, if I went there, my drugs are going to be $75 a month, and if I went here, it's $4, knowing that there's a difference in the pharmacy to go with as if they're in network with that insurer. So especially when it comes to like Medicare, I have several of my clients that are always surprised that, oh, I thought I had to go to CVS or I thought I had to go to Walmart, but you mean my local pharmacy, I can get the same price or it's actually lower cost? So we always start with looking at the lower pharmacist. And I do have a question here, I promise that I'm coming to that, Madam Chair. So you mentioned reimbursement. So we know reimbursement comes through a PBM or a network. We also know about the safe harbor that was passed in 1993 where PBMs basically get kickbacks on both ends. But is it the purpose of the state to be involved in a private contract with the pharmaceutical benefit manager and a private pharmacy? I would contend it is not the place to get into a position. But when it comes to Medicaid, we do oversee the Medicaid program, and he's just shaking his head no. I chair the Bob Bethel Committee that oversees Medicaid, but would be happy to, I know I have some pharmacists that are coming to my office, would be happy to visit with you about that. But I also think that we do need a federal law to take a look at what's happening with the PBMs. Absolutely agree with you on that, to revisit the safe harbor. So here is my question. Short of getting involved in a private contract, short of taxpayers trying to help a pharmacy stay open, I'm going to re-ask what Senator Rose asked. What else could we do to assist? Are there rules or regulations that are in place in the state of Kansas that are a hindrance to the independent pharmacist.
Sloan Freeman, pharmacist. One of the things that we are also asking is transparency. So, so that employers, the state, other players know where their money's going. Because I believe that most people think that their dollars are going to the pharmacy, and that isn't always necessarily the case. And so just having that transparency between where are your dollars actually going would be helpful.
And if I may, are you referring to state dollars or are you referring to the individual patient's dollars?
Both state, employer, and I think part of this is that we need state reform because of the commercial side of it. Medicare, yes, federally needs some reform, but also the state needs some reform because of the commercial payers, the employer groups that come through the state of Kansas.
And again, that's a private contract, is it not?
It is, but having some transparency of where those employer dollars are going.
Be happy to visit with you about that. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Last question, Senator Francisco.
Thank you very much for being here. I'm proud to be in the district that includes the University of Kansas. So I'm going to ask again about the state's role in the pharmacy, is it PMBs? PBM? What is the state's role? Because I know there has been legislation discussed, so it is not, my understanding, just a federal issue. So what would the state's role be in overseeing that? And we certainly oversee insurance and make rules for that.
So, Tessa Schnelly, pharmacist. I think right now our insurance commissioner's office has to, these PBMs have to register. However, there's not a lot of teeth there, meaning they're registering, but there is not really there's not a lot in the statutes about what can we do if we have a poor player that's involved. And so we need a little bit more oversight allowed in that space to be able to stop some of this non-transparency actions. But I also think other states do have more oversight than what we do. Obviously, one of our biggest payers is the state. So I think that there's a huge benefit to some of that transparency that we were talking about through the insurance commissioner's office of allowing some of that additional teeth into that those responsibilities from a regulatory perspective. Also, to speak also to your question of additional things that the state can help with, pharmacists are not currently included in those programs that are bringing individuals to the rural spaces. They are not in the recruitment or payment for their education to bring them back into that. We're just not recognized in that way, and our business isn't. I think that as pharmacies begin to close, the state will have to play some sort of role in being able to also prop them up as healthcare professionals to be able to reinvigorate those areas to get the care there. But really, where we're at right now, the main space between us and the state with those contracts and what have you is the insurance commissioner's office. And that is our main point at this point in time of touch point that y'all have with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here today. It's been very interesting, very informative. We're so grateful that you are doing what you're doing, and come back and visit us anytime. And I do encourage you to visit your individual legislators. So thank you so much. Committee, tomorrow we're going to have a hearing on Senate Bill 64, and we're going to work Senate Bill 32. So if you have any amendments or questions, try and get that taken care of before then. Thank you all so much. Meeting adjourned.